I have a story here from GameRant.com. Walmart is reportedly going to throw out copies of Starfield. They'll reportedly be disposing of physical copies of Xbox Series X exclusive game Starfield, marking down the price to 3 cents and implementing a point of sale block so that people wouldn't be able to buy it at that price. The majority of players already purchased the game digitally, so Walmart's decision won't impact the game's future or Bethesda's plans to support it. This is a part of a larger trend of retailers moving away from physical media, which raises questions about game preservation efforts. Sail the high seas, folks. That's what I got to say about that, because this is the future. It looks as though Walmart will begin throwing out physical copies of Xbox Series X console exclusive games Starfield starting early next week. And talks about, Best Buy has recently ended its sales of DVD and Blu-ray disc. Walmart's been, doing the same. There's been rumblings of Walmart was going to stop selling physical Xbox games. This was a report from last year. Now there's more evidence to back up those claims, because some Walmart employees have shared memos on social media revealing the order to dispose of the game and everything. And it's been backed up. Wario64 on Twitter, X, whatever, has basically said that they saw the same memo and everything. They show pictures of it and stuff and everything. But it's just the kind of thing where this is just terrible, because with physical, you actually own it. Although you could always argue that actually that technically only really applies to largely first party Nintendo games, because pretty much every other game that comes out on disc, quote unquote, requires an enormous friggin' download, a day one patch as they call it, or some BS like that, which is absolutely absurd. It's ridiculous, because you're basically not even selling the game. Now I will say that there's, does it play, I believe is what the Twitter account is called, and they'll have updates on games that will actually play right out of the box, essentially without any updates. You could play it offline, all that stuff, yada yada. There's not as many as you would hope, and there's not as many as you would think. It is absurd the number of games that come out. I'd be pulling a number out of my ass if I were to just say, what, but it feels like it's 98% or 99% of all games that come out these days are not playable right away. Now, are not playable off the disc or cartridge in the case of the Switch. It is freaking insane to me that that's the case. The number might actually be lower. Maybe it's only, quote unquote, 92%. It is extremely high because, like I said, first party Nintendo games are pretty much the only ones I can think of that are like that. You might occasionally get a few games here, especially if it's like a port of an older title, or a remake or whatever. Although usually not with the remakes, usually if it's just more of a straight port. But it's hard to say. It goes on and it talks some about Starfield's DLC, blah blah blah. It's not going to have any effect on their support for it, yeah, all that stuff. It's which is all good news for people who play Starfield and stuff. This is neither here nor there, I suppose, but I thought Starfield was good, not great. But it also depends on what you're really looking for out of the game. Like, I've known people who've played the game and they didn't like it at all. And I know other people who played the game and loved it. So, teach their own. I think the bigger story is that this is just the beginning. That, okay, well, first it's Starfield, but now it's going to be all Xbox games. And then how long until Sony does the same? Because I remember the days. I'm not sure how many of you watching this would have lived through it or whatever, but the old days in which you had to buy like the Game Pass, or I forget what they would exactly call it. I think they called it basically, but when you bought the game secondhand and they wanted you to pay $10 to be able to access the multiplayer and shit like that. Company's been doing that kind of stuff for a long time, for years. All these companies, they want to sell the game to you digitally so that you can't trade it in. You can't lend it to somebody. You can't do any of this kind of stuff. And they try to give you little, like if you set your console as home, well, you could play, actually you just buy the game and two people can play it at the same time. But of course you're paying full price, which of course full price now is $70. How long until it's $80? They're going to give you the same song and dance. Well, games cost so much to make these days and stuff. It's like, well, you people are just terrible at managing your money. I think that's the bigger problem. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble here. I think this is terrible. Like I said, sail the high seas would be my Although I will say that with the current games, as large as these damn things are, I mean, you're talking hundreds of gigabytes for some games. I mean, that is a little bit of hyperbole. But if you're talking, tens and tens of gigabytes, like 80 gigabytes for this game or whatever, it's like, man, that's freaking hard to be downloading or whatever you want to call it, sailing the high seas for games that size. Like, it's one of the reasons why I like some modern games, but for a lot of games, it's like, dude, I'm perfectly happy with the older ones. That's just me, though. I don't want to say too much more for obvious reasons. Anyway, thank you very much for what I'll link this in the description box. You can read it for yourself. I kind of glossed over some of the stuff here, but